I'm not going to preach a sermon today or a homily. Rather, in the spirit of the late Father Colin McEachin, I'm going to preach an admonition. How many of you remember Father McEachin? Oh, he was something here. He used to get up in this pulpit every now and then and give great Jeremiads in morality and all of these various things. And kind of a correction of what things going on in the parish, etc. Today I decided I want to talk a little bit about confession and the protocol of going to confession. You know, confession in the early church was in public. And the penance was given in public, and the penance was something else. Boy, you had to go out and wait sometimes for months. You weren't allowed in the church till that was your penance. You know, you had to stand there, tell people you were bound not to go into churches, anything like that. Well, the church has evolved when it comes to humanity in that way. Thanks be to God. And instead of a whole Lent outside waiting in the rain, you're now given 3 Our Fathers and 3 Hail Marys. Much easier. The church can do that. It's not really compensation, but the church makes up for the compensation on that. And now the confessions are secret. Leave that to the Irish. It was the Irish monks who made them secret, and both the Eastern and Western Church accepted this. Thanks be the Irish just didn't want anybody to know what they've done. Anyway, now we have 2 confessionals back there. They're all right, but the whole situation physically is not the greatest in the world. I mean, these confessionals are very close to the pews, and that presents certain problems sometimes. We've tried our best to make them so that they can't be heard outside, but still, you know, some people speak loud. They can't whisper, and I'm one of them. All these years of preaching, etc., I've lost a great deal of the second voice, the middle voice, as it were, because when you whisper, nobody can understand, especially on the other side of a screen. So I have to use a low voice. And boy, that breaks down after a while. So then my voice gets louder and louder. I'm sorry about that. And the same way I notice the people, well, the thing I would ask is those down by the confessional, when the confessions are being heard, please go somewhere else. You know, because it's awkward both for those in the confessional and those outside the confessional who are nearby. Because if you hear the confession, you are bound to secrecy, absolutely bound under pain of sin. Yeah, you're not bound quite like the priest is bound. The priest is bound not under pain of sin, but under pain of being practically thrown out. You have to go to the Pope to get dispensed from breaking any kind of person's seal. Now this means the confession of specific individuals, of course. It doesn't mean in general. But so now there are 3 kinds of penitents, I'd say. There are the lax ones, there's the middle kind, most people, and there are the scrupulous people. All 3 of them have problems in a certain sense, wondering what on earth to say, how to go to confession. Well, remember the good old days? You were taught in school, you go through the 10 commandments of God and the commandments of the church. Both of these are still very much in effect. And there are 2 kinds of sins. St. John tells us in his epistle, there are deadly sins and there are non-deadly sins. We would call them mortal sins or venial sins. Venial sins can be absolved simply by receiving the sacraments, for example, Holy Communion, you like that if you're sorry for them. But it's also good to bring venial sins into the confessional too, because you want to get that confessional, that sacramental grace of that particular sacrament. Mortal sins must be confessed in the confessional or in the sacrament of penance and reconciliation. But it's mostly the sacrament of reconciliation. Those who are in mortal sin. Now what is it? What is mortal sin? Mortal sin is something that you deliberately commit that is objectively serious, and you are totally and completely aware of the seriousness of it, and you deliberately, knowing the seriousness of it, you say, I'm going to do it anyway. I know what the results are, I know what the consequences are, but I'm going to do it. That's a mortal sin. How many practicing Catholics really act that way? And you know, if you're really a practicing Catholic, you don't really do this so deliberately, unless, and this is the pitfall, unless you figure, I'll do it and then I'll go to confession afterwards. In other words, now that I've fallen, I might as well go the whole way and have a heck of a good time being every other kind of sin in the meantime. You know, that is ruthless. That is terrible. You know, that's an abuse of a sacrament. Should never do that. But there are the lax people too. You know, go to confession maybe once a year, once every 4 or 5 years. They'll come in, they'll say, I'm not much of a confessor, but it's been 5 years since my last confession. I say, oh, yeah. What have you done? Well, I missed Mass a couple of times. Anything else? No. Can't think of anything else. Oh, come on. Yeah. 4 or 5 years without the sacraments? That's impossible. You know, well, I can't think of anything. And then if they start thinking of something, you think, oh no, because there are people waiting for confession. You know, and he wants to confess everything for 5 years, going back. But at least they're confessing. It's better for that person to find a priest and to go in, you know, really go through this or make a retreat. That'd be the best thing. Now, what I'm saying today, I'm not going to go into great things. This is not a parish mission, nor is it a retreat. I'm just talking about simply about the practical things of confession. But the people who won't go for years, I remember hearing confessions down in San Joaquin Valley, California. The old farmers down there, Portuguese farmers. What have you done? Nothing. Have you done this? Nope. You done this? Nope. Done this? Nope. Well, what have you done? Nothing. Finally, they say, you beat your wife? Yeah, everybody does that. Yeah. Oh, my Lord. Anyway. Or the people that come in and say, I don't know why I'm here. I said, well, you're here to confess your sins. Yeah, but I haven't sinned. Then I ask them, why are you here? You know. They'll say, but I don't sin. The priest will say, well, even the Pope says he's a sinner. The person says, well, the Pope might say that. He might be, but I'm not. Yeah. But anyway, then we have those who come in and will say, all right, now, I've sinned, Father, no doubt about it. But I don't think it's me, it's my husband. You know, I did this because he drove me into it. And he said this and he said that. He said the next thing. And Father, I got mad. Wasn't I righteously getting mad about these? So finally I want to say, well, here's penance for you. Here's absolution for your husband. You know, you really have to, you know, choose yourself humbly, etc. Now, what does this mean? It means you are aware of sin. Go quickly through the 10 Commandments, you know, and you'll say, yeah, say humbly, I cheated, I did that. You don't have to go into all kinds of details on this. Well, I was driving down the street, you see, and this guy cut me off. And Father, don't you get mad that people cut you off? Anyway, Father, he cut me off. He cut around, and I tried my best to get around him, but he kept honking, and I got mad. I don't care about that. Just say, I committed a sin of anger, venial sin of anger. You know, because that isn't serious enough to be mortal, unless you want to go and kill a guy. Well, that could be too. But anyway, just be very, very humble. Don't give details. Just say, I sinned. I lied. I was unfair to this individual. I stole something. You have to say if you stole something, what it is and its value, etc. And for the most part, the problem about mortal sins. Now it comes in the sixth commandment. That's a little different. Sixth commandment, everything is serious. The reason for that is because it's part of you. It's within you. Everything else is outside of you. When it comes to things sexual, they're within you, and you can't get away from them. They're always going to be there, you know. And they are the most persistent of all temptations. And but what you have to do for that is you get a bad thought. Everybody gets bad thoughts, and what you do is say, "Oh, a bad thought. I have to think of something else now." Or if you say, well, let's see, what is this thought? I shouldn't keep this from, finally, no, I better get rid of it. Venial sin. Mortal sin means, I'm having this bad thought, serious in itself. I know it's a mortal sin. I know it's a mortal sin. I know the offenses of a mortal sin. I'm going to do it anyway. Boom. Mortal sin. You know? And that's why I say if you have that kind of a sin on you, for heaven's sakes, don't do it because you feel that, well, I can get to confession. That's an abuse of a sacrament. That's all right. I'll go ahead and do it. Then I'll get to confession, get wired up again with the Lord. You know, don't do that. Another thing is, do not go to Holy Communion if you know that you have a mortal sin in your soul. People say, well, Father, it's embarrassing. Everybody goes. Yes, but there are all kinds of reasons why a person wouldn't go to communion rather than simply a mortal sin. All kinds of reasons. You broke the fast. You don't feel like going today. You don't feel worthy today, etc., whatever happens to be. But to be deliberately in mortal sin and deliberately to go, you're guilty of the body and blood of the Lord, as St. Paul tells us. And as I say, when you get in the confessional, I know some people are hard of hearing. That's one of the problems here. We one time had electrical devices in the confessional. You see the ruins of them in there now. But they didn't work. Because when you use those things, it doesn't help to whisper. You've got to speak in a full voice practically for the person to hear, you know, on the other side for it to catch electronically. So it's better this way. And sometimes when people are hard of hearing, it's very hard on them, very difficult. And sometimes giving the penance, what? Father, I didn't, what? What? Finally, it goes, that means 3 Our Fathers. If it works that way. So don't get too self-conscious about this, etc. It's a wonderful sacrament. We are sinners. We do sin. Otherwise, the Father would never have sent His Son into the world if we weren't sinners. We're all sinners. We have to be humble about that. We have to pray the Lord will stay on the right track and we'll try to do little penitential things to ourselves to build up that resistance. Say, I really want to see this thing today, or I really want to finish this book. I can't wait till I finish it. Put it off for a few hours, or put it off to the next day. It said, this is a way of building up resistance. And then when these thoughts come, turn, especially when it comes to anything impure, turn to Our Lady. She's the one that is so pure. Say, help. Mother, help me. And now, I know that today it's very, very difficult because a few years back, society had purity more in mind. I don't think there's such a virtue anymore recognized called modesty or anything like that. Boy meets girl today. On their first date, they have to go to it, and that's ridiculous. But that's what everybody's learning today. Youth is learning, etc. These are sins. These are mortal. These are serious sins if one totally gives into them, etc. And so I know, and all we need is another source of temptation, and that's the internet. As if there weren't enough sources of temptation. So be very, very careful there what you deliberately call it, because that takes a special act to call it something on the internet. To call it pornography like that. It's a special act. And that goes, you're really fooling around then with temptation. And you can't put yourself into that position. Because that itself could then be, if you deliberately do that, that itself could be mortal. Simply to do, even though you fail in finding what you're looking for. So anyway, just rejoice in the fact that we don't have to do this publicly anymore. But now, you can still come to church and say the penances that are given. We don't pretend that the penances given make full restitution for the guilt of the sin. But because of God's mercy, this is as it is.